All right, Charm City Bird Watch, episode 151, post-draft. We're here at Saturday night. It's about 9:30 on Saturday night. I was going to do this on Sunday, but then I'm typing out my notes here. I'm getting everything together, and I said, you know what? The inspiration is striking me. I'm going to record now. And, hey, you want to know the truth? It's because I got nothing going on. It's Saturday night. It's 9:30. Most people have something to do at this time. I got nothing going on. So, you know what? Figured, let's bang out this draft recap episode. Nothing fancy, nothing elaborate. Just going to go through pick by pick here, round by round in order. Give you my thoughts on all of these Ravens selections. The Ravens ended up making 8 total picks. A little bit of movement, not a whole lot, but a little bit of moving in terms of trades. Maybe not where we expected it, but we'll go through all of it. I'll give you my thoughts, what I like, what I don't like, and really just kind of preface all of this by saying, if you're new to the podcast, if you're listening for the first time or one of the first few times, first and foremost, thank you, welcome. I am not a mock draft guy. I am not a college football guy, really, to be honest. I'm not a draft analyst type of guy. That stuff goes in one ear and out the other. It's over my head a lot of the times. I can't get into it. I really can't. With that being said, I have tremendous respect for those, especially in the Ravens online Twitter sphere, blog sphere, podcasting sphere, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of really talented people who just do this purely as a hobby. They do it. They don't get paid for it. I could name people, but I'd certainly be leaving people out if I started dropping names here. But you know who they are. There's so many of these great people in the Ravens community that make these mock drafts, cover who the Ravens are picking, give us good information, their insight. They've watched the film. They've, spent hours putting in the work, researching these people. And myself, I've done none of that. All right, I've taken into account some of what they've said. I've taken into account some of the other, scouts, available scouting reports out there on the internet. I'm not going to sit here and spew out all this information over the next however many minutes and have you think that this was all based on me watching film. It's not. It isn't. So I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I know more than what I know. If I don't know something, I'm not afraid to tell you I don't know something. I do have some pretty strong opinions on some of these picks just upon the principle of what position was taken, at what time it was taken. Enough of me rambling, enough of me wasting time. Let's just start right from the top. Ravens came into this draft with a unique situation, 2 first-round picks after dealing Orlando Brown Jr. to the Kansas City Chiefs. They were able to slide up from the second round into the 31st pick in the first round, in addition to the 27th overall pick that they already had. And it's not very often that the Ravens find themselves with 2 first-round picks, and it's not very often that they find themselves using both of them. And I think you would, I myself and many others in the past week leading up to the draft really thought that it was a pretty safe bet that the Ravens would use one of these picks and trade the other one and move back into the second round, pick up an additional third rounder, maybe a fifth, a sixth, or a seventh as well. Just more draft capital, more bullets in the chamber, so to speak. And we know DaCosta, that's his style. It was Ozzy's style too. The way this draft played out, if we can just look at it as a whole before I dive into the first round in depth, they hold on to both first-round selections, don't trade back, don't make any picks in the second round. So not only did they not slide back out of the first round, they didn't trade up from the third round to the second round, which I thought was a little unlikely, but still to not pick at all in the second round, that's uncharacteristic for the Ravens. And then to finish things out, to finish the draft in the 5th round, no 6th rounders, no 7th rounders, 3 picks in the 5th round to close out the draft. Just not a usual draft in that regard, but they still finish with with 8 picks. Definitely not what I predicted. Probably not what a lot of people predicted. And I think that makes it a little exciting. That's the excitement of draft weekend, is when the unexpected does happen. So as far as these first round selections, I'm watching the draft, as we all were, on Thursday night, watching the first round. It's taken forever. Okay, by the way, this is not a hot take by any means, but why is the draft not starting at 7 p.m.? I mean, what's the reasoning? I don't understand the TV ratings, the time slots, all that. I'm willing to admit that's above me, but at the same time, we know how long this takes every year. It takes 30 minutes just to get through the first pick. Maybe you get the first 2 picks in 30 minutes. By 8:30, maybe the first 2 picks are off the board. It's just and those are the picks that we know. We know who's getting taken there. There's no mystery. We knew it was Trevor Lawrence. You can cut out the band. Who was it? Some Kings of Leon or whatever was playing a couple songs to start out the draft. What are we doing here, folks? Come on. No reason. No reason for any of that. Cut the music. Cut the theatrics. Do all of that before 8 o'clock. Make that the pre-show. How about that? If you're going to start at 8 o'clock, I want pick number 1 to be rolling in at 8:15 at the latest, not 8:20, 25, 30. Get off my soapbox. So I'm sitting here. I'm waiting for the Ravens to pick. We get into the 11 o'clock hour, and we're approaching the Ravens. The draft was shaking out very favorably for them. In terms of best player available, talent level, that sort of thing. A lot of QBs taken early. That's good. Ravens don't need a quarterback. So every time a quarterback was taken, that's sliding other great players that the Ravens could use farther down the board. That's great. High-level cornerbacks. The Ravens weren't going to take a cornerback in the first round. Those slide as well. So things were panning out pretty well. And we start getting within 5 picks, and you're sizing it up, and everyone's saying the names, everyone's going over who they want. And the big one that I kept, repeating in my mind, the one that I kept resonating with me, was Rashod Bateman. This is a guy that flies off the page. He just, you see the tape, and realistically, I haven't watched, like I said, I didn't watch all this guy's game film. I've seen the highlights more so than any of these other players. It strikes you right off the bat. Everything about this guy just screams NFL talent, number 1 receiver, go up and get it type of guy. He's got everything that we as Ravens fans have been wanting in a wide receiver. 6'2". He's got the height. What is he like? 220, 230. Pretty good size. He probably could even bulk up a little bit. I'm sure he will in the NFL weight room. And when you throw up the ball in these one-on-one matchups, he beats his man. He goes up, he gets it. He goes up, he even makes one-handed catches. His hands are the real deal. And you go back to the last couple times the Ravens took receivers in the first round, Marquise Brown a couple years ago, and then Rashod Perriman before that. We all know how that worked out. Rashod Perriman, he's lightning fast. He's got the size. He's wonderful from a size perspective. Speed off the charts. Good route running. Hands, a little bit of an issue with the hands, but I think that the Ravens will overcome that. Nope. Couldn't catch the ball. And I'm sorry, I don't care how fast you run. I don't care how big you are, whatever. If you can't catch the ball, you don't belong in the NFL. Right off the bat, no hesitation. Rashod Bateman, great hands, great technique. That's the other thing. We want to go back to Marquise Brown. We saw the drop issues come into effect this past year, and I've mentioned it on the podcast before, his technique. He doesn't stick his arms out and bring the ball into his chest. He baskets his arms. He cradles his arms and waits to catch slant passes like they're a punt. I'm like, he's got his arms fixated as if he's returning a punt. and he's looking to just trap the ball against his chest. He doesn't stick his arms out. He doesn't stick his hands out. He's terrible technique. It just, one of the things that drives me nuts about his game, because he's got all the freakish skills, and I do think he has the ability to be a game-changing wide receiver for the Ravens, and I'm going to get into that in a second here with this Bateman pick and what it can do to transform this offense. But just on the surface, Bateman seems like the complete package. Is he going to get the targets? Is he going to get all the opportunity to be a true number one wide receiver? I don't know. But I can tell you this. I haven't been this excited about a first-round pick in a while. I liked what they did with Patrick Queen last year. I was excited about that pick in the moment. But I am truly just really excited about Rashod Bateman. This is exactly what the Ravens needed. Addresses an immediate need. And like I alluded to a second ago, I think he has the capability to change the identity of this offense. And when I say identity, I mean maybe identity is not the best term. But he has a chance to change this offense just with his presence alone. And I know that sounds like the super homer take, drinking the purple Kool-Aid, whatever you want to call it. Hear me out. You bring in a guy like this to a wide receiver room that was lacking a true alpha, a true number one, and now, all of a sudden, Marquise Brown, the guy for the past 2 years that you've been trying to figure out a way to turn him into a legit weapon in this league, to make him produce like a number one wide receiver? Because that's the thing, number one wide receiver, how do you define it? Is it targets or is it explosiveness? Because they're so, look at Kansas City with Tyreek Hill. Is he a number one wide receiver with them? Or is he just perceived that way because he's a scary weapon, and the Chiefs do a fantastic job tapping into that unique talent and utilizing him in ways that other teams, other opposing defenses just can't account for? I'd like to see the same for Marquise Brown. I was saying that during the season. That was the one thing I got on Greg Roman's case for. Let's get more creative with how Marquise Brown is used in this offense. Let's stop lining him up outside. Let's move him into the slot more. Let's just move him around. Let's move him all over the place. But I will admit, up until now, you just haven't had the personnel around Hollywood to make opposing defenses say, yeah, we're going to pay attention to these other guys. Because outside of Willie Snead, who was a great possession receiver, and I liked Willie Snead a lot, you didn't have a true number one. You didn't really have a true presence on the outside. You had Willie Snead and you had Mark Andrews across the middle. And now you add Bateman. Now you add Sammy Watkins in free agency. Those two guys can play outside. Now Marquise Brown can play more in the slot. He can still play outside every once in a while, and that's what I'm getting at. You open a game on offense. First play, Marquise Brown could be lined up out wide. 2 plays later, he's in the slot. A couple plays later, he's running an end around. Maybe you line him up in the backfield. I don't know. Move this guy everywhere on offense. Use him like a weapon. His position should not be wide receiver. His position should be weapon. He has a unique skill set that not a lot of other wide receivers in this league have. Utilize it. Look, I just bashed him for his technique with catching and everything and how he doesn't reach out and snag balls and everything. That still applies. That still stands. But you want to beat up on a guy and you want to say, oh, he's not a number one wide receiver. He's not this. He's not that. You can get close to number one wide receiver production out of him now that you have other legit threats on this offense. So I think the presence of a Bateman, it's gonna open everything up in the pass game. And I'm not even expecting him to go off and have a Justin Jefferson-esque rookie season for a wide receiver. I just want him to go out there, play a full 16 games, learn as he goes, pick up the speed of the NFL very quickly, and be a contributor. I don't need him to be an all-pro. I don't need him to be rookie of the year right off the bat. But his presence alone is a threat. It's another threat to the defense. Because before, what were the threats to the defense in terms of the pass? Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, and then Willie Snead after that. And Willie Snead's not even a guy that you're scared of. He's just a guy that does the gritty stuff, the dirty work. But he's not a guy that when you line up across from him, you're like, oh man, how are we gonna stop Willie Snead? We got a game plan to stop Willie Snead. But now you have Bateman, people opposing defenses. Ooh, what are we gonna do about Bateman? And if Sammy Watkins stays healthy, he's a veteran, he's experienced, he knows his way around this league. He's another good guy you can line up on the outside. You can't ignore him. And then at that point, all of a sudden the defense doesn't have the ability to just key in on Mark Andrews or key in on Marquise Brown. You're not going to be able to double those guys or take them out of plays as often as you would like. The opportunity for explosiveness is there. And I just hope that Greg Roman will be able to tap into that. And after the Bateman pick, we immediately shift our focus to 31. Ravens are going to trade back, right? They got their guy Bateman. He was right there waiting for him. Perfect pick, home run. Didn't have to move up, didn't have to do anything. You got your guy at 27. Perfect. So they're going to trade out of 31, right? They'll move back, pick up a second rounder and a third rounder. And the Ravens, nothing's happening. The Ravens are on the clock. It just felt like watching that in real time. They were trying to find a way to move back. But when you're in that situation, it's not up to you. You know, if you're trying to slide back, it's not up to you. It's about who's on the other end of the phone. So really, you look at the way the draft played out, and earlier I was saying how great it was. You have all these quarterbacks taken. That pushes back all these other talented players that the Ravens can actually use. That's great. But now this 31st pick, if you're trying to trade it to someone who's going to move up into the end of the first round, why would anyone move up unless they're really taking a quarterback? And I'm not saying that's a blanket statement. I mean, you can move up for other guys. But I think it just makes the most sense that you would move up for a quarterback. You get that fifth-year option on the rookie contract. But at that point, all the good quarterbacks have been taken. So there really wasn't a reason for someone to trade up. And with that in mind, it makes sense why the Ravens couldn't find someone to come up and take pick number 31. And they end up taking not Jason Oweh, Odafe Oweh. And I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. And it's a pretty cool name, to be honest. I like it a lot. I like the name. And the pick itself here, I'll be honest, I'm not crazy about it. Like his name, crazy about the name, but the pick, I'm not gonna get too heavy on it, because on the surface level, you took an outside linebacker, an edge player that addresses another immediate need, and you held on to both your first round picks. You're in a win now mode. I've been preaching this for weeks now. Win now mode. Let's bring in the guys. Let's bring in all the pieces we can to try to win now in 2021. And what better way to do that in the draft than having 2 first-round picks who would prospectively be 2 week 1 starters for you at 2 of your biggest positions of need. That's great on paper, but I can't get too crazy about the player itself. Certainly not in the way that I was excited about Bateman. He doesn't scream sure thing to me. Like, Bateman just screams, this is a sure thing. This is a solid home run pick. Doesn't mean it's a guarantee to work out, but Oweh just doesn't jump off the page like Bateman does or other first-round picks. And it's not even the sacks thing either. I'm not even hung up about him not having any sacks in his last season at Penn State. It's not great. It's not a great look. You know, he's going to have to answer questions about it, but we know, you watch football, it's more than sacks. And this guy seems like he's a pretty versatile linebacker. 7 total sacks in 3 years. And just, look, he can be a great all-around player. He's sure as hell he's athletic as hell. No doubt about that. Freakish size. Speed is insane for a defensive player. For a linebacker, he's got insane speed. And you know how much I love the way the Ravens have built their defense to stop the run. This guy looks like he's got the talent and the skill set, the tools to be a great run defender. But I think if you're looking to address that pass rush need, I don't know. I mean, this guy will have his opportunities. We know Wink Martindale's been a wizard in terms of creating pressure. We had to utilize the blitz to do it, but nonetheless, he's found a way to get some creative results. But that's the first round. And hey, at the end of the day, you address 2 areas on the depth chart that were lacking, so I can't be mad. Let's move on to day 2. As I said, the Ravens not active at all in the second round. And, after they didn't trade out of the first round, I thought it was unlikely that we would see them move up from the third into the second, because at that point you're selling off your picks to move up. So I thought that was really unlikely. But at the same time, we know how much DaCosta just probably hated that long wait. I'm sure he was pacing around the war room. Just everyone else was probably, sitting there waiting, taking their notes. And he's probably just didn't sit down at all, just pacing back and forth, so anxious. But they end up waiting until the third round, where they had 2 picks waiting for him, 94 and 104 overall. And with the 94th pick, we get right back to exciting picks for Nolan. We take a big fella by the name of Ben Cleveland, and this guy is a monster. He is a freak of nature. He's being nicknamed Big Country. I like that. I love that nickname. And I heard a little bit of his press conference. He sounds like a big country. He looks like a big country. He sounds like a big country. Love that nickname. Just look at that. I'm looking at his profile right now. Look at this picture. Look at that smile, that beard. This guy, 6'6", 343. God, man, what a behemoth of a man. All the pictures, there's been pictures of him in the weight room. There's a picture of him on vacation, just standing next to a normal-sized person. And this guy is huge. He's a guard out of Georgia. I love this pick. But from what I've seen in some of the film and these highlights that I'm watching, he's just mauling people. And at the college level, with that kind of size advantage, not too surprising. But he's doing it at a big school, so that certainly counts for something. And he's just mauling guys. And, he starts going up against big guys in the NFL. Not going to dominate like he did in college. He's not going to put people on their ass like he did in college, right off the snap. But he's got the size to play in the NFL. And, from what I heard DaCosta talking about it, seems to be pretty nimble on his feet. I think he's going to have a good chance to start at left guard week 1, be a little competition there. This is with the assumption, because, again, they didn't address center in this draft, so I'm going to assume that Bradley Bozeman's going to make the slide over to center. That's where he played in college. Seems like he can fit right in there. Slide him over. Now you have a vacancy at left guard. I think you could have a competition with him. Ben Powers certainly still in the mix. Ben Bredesen is still around. I just don't know where he is in terms of the depth chart, but he was a draft pick last year. And then, right guard's going to be Zeitler. It's already been asked of John Harbaugh, and I guess DaCosta as well, is this a guy that you think could slide to the tackle position just by his size alone? And I think that's a little risky to do, and they, Harbaugh and DaCosta said the same thing, to try to do that right off the bat. And I would imagine the Ravens are going to address that vacancy at right tackle through free agency. I think that would be their best course of action. But down the road, a year, 2 years from now, is Ben Cleveland a guy that you're going to see starting at right tackle for the Ravens? To get a third rounder that's going to come in and start for you week 1, that's fantastic. Love that. And I think he fits that Ravens style above everything else. The size, the all the other stuff we talked about. Just with the Ravens being a run-first team, if he's not the best in terms of pass protection, I'm watching the highlights, and he just looks like a mauler for a run-first team. Moving on, pick 104 overall, the Ravens threw us our first real curveball. The first 3 picks they made in this draft all addressed immediate needs, all areas where the depth chart is not that deep. And we get to their 4th pick, 2nd pick in the 3rd round, and they take Brandon Stephens from SMU. And he was listed as a cornerback when he was taken. Now, when I see this pop up on my screen, I have no idea who Brandon Stephens is. I just see cornerback, and I'm like, what? Huh? Corner in the 3rd round? And the wheels immediately start turning in my head, and I'm thinking, well, damn, the Ravens really must think highly of this guy, if they're going to take a corner in the 3rd round. And then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I said, well, Jimmy Smith, he's at the end of the road. Probably 1 year left, maybe 2 at most, and who knows if that other year would be with the Ravens or not. Marcus Peters could be a cap casualty in the coming seasons. And Tavon Young, I don't think he's in line for another extension just by the nature of his injury history. So at that point, Marlon Humphrey, he's locked up long term. And you like the way Anthony Averett's come on strong in the past year. But outside of that, Amon Marshall, he's a bust. Who else you got? Devontae Harris. They signed Devontae Harris or something. He's still in-house, but he's not a guy that you're confident in starting. So to take a defensive back, I don't hate it by that nature. But then I start hearing some more about this guy, and I start seeing all those people that know more about the draft than I do talking about it on Twitter, and they're thrown off just as much as I was, not just by the fact that they took a corner, but apparently this guy wasn't a 3rd round or even a 4th round mocked guy. This guy, Brandon Stephens, he's being mocked in the 5th round, maybe even later. It just not really on many people's radar, probably not on a lot of Ravens fans' radar for a couple reasons. This was a pick that threw a lot of people off. But if there's one thing you can say, we hear it after every single pick, the Ravens, the Harbaugh, DaCosta. We love this player. We love that player. We were so happy to get him. We were so happy. Blah, we couldn't believe he fell to us. They say the same thing about every guy. But when you get a case like Brandon Stephens here, where I'm not going to call this a reach, but by the way mock drafts were shaking out and probably the way a lot of other teams were evaluating Brandon Stephens, I think it's safe to say that the Ravens really, really like Brandon Stephens. So when they tell us that this was a guy we had our eye on and we really wanted from the start of the draft, I don't think they're BSing us when they tell us that about Stephens. Just saying. So take some confidence in that. Do with that what you want. But at the same time, there are some question marks here. Now, it also needs to be said, I found this interesting, DaCosta right away, he immediately referred to Stephens as a free safety, not as a corner. So right there, a guy that can play both positions, obviously. He said he has the ability to play, outside and, in the safety role as well. But he also explicitly used the term free safety when referring to Stephens. So addressing that lack of safety depth, hey, we all know that was a must because, again, behind Deshaun Elliott, behind Chuck Clark, you really don't have anybody. So Brandon Stephens immediately fills that role of depth. He'll definitely be a special teams player as a rookie. And then, like I said, with my initial thoughts there, when I thought he was a true cornerback depth can change very quickly. We talk about it all the time. Things change so quickly in this league. Maybe having a guy that's there waiting to take over and play outside in the coming years, not such a bad thing. I'm okay with that pick. It's far from my least favorite pick here. It was certainly a curveball, but I think it makes sense on a couple fronts, and I don't hate it. That's for sure. I don't hate it at all. Now, this next pick, this might be my least favorite pick in the draft. And I hate saying this because it's just going to sound like I'm a hater for this guy and I'm already counting him out. And I'm a fan. I want all these guys to succeed. But I'm just being realistic here when I tell you Tylan Wallace, wide receiver out of Oklahoma State, first Ravens selection, actually the only Ravens selection of the 4th round, number 131 overall. Mr. Wallace, another wide receiver taken by the Ravens the past couple years. And immediately I hop on Twitter and I'm seeing the reaction to this pick. And it's nothing but people, oh, what a great pick. What a steal. Oh my goodness gracious. The Ravens are doing so much work to provide for Lamar Jackson, and they're doing this, that, the other thing, and they're actually committing to getting him weapons. Like, please just slow your roll. Please slow down. Would you listen to yourself for 1 second? They took Rashod Bateman. That's great. That's fantastic. I've already spent enough time talking about how much I love that pick. But don't throw this Tylan Wallace pick in the 4th round as evidence that they're actually taking legit shots on bringing wide receivers in here. You know it. I know it. That's not true. Any wide receiver not taken in the first 3 rounds is not a legit swing for a wide receiver. Now, if you take one in the first and then you take one in the 4th like the Ravens did here, it's not a terrible look as it would be if you waited until the 3rd to take one like they did last year when they waited to take Duvernay and then Prochet later on. But as the name Prochet comes up and as the name Duvernay comes up, like, what are we doing here? What is Tylan Wallace? Again, I don't have to watch film on this guy. I don't care. Quite frankly, I don't care what this guy's film is. Like, what is his role going to be on this team? You didn't give James Prochet any sort of a real legitimate shot. You didn't even give Devin Duvernay a legitimate shot to prove himself in this offense. Now you added Sammy Watkins. You drafted Bateman earlier. This is a waste of a pick, in my opinion. And maybe Wallace ends up being a guy that hangs around and he does stuff for you. But quite frankly, with the Ravens' track record of drafting wide receivers, look, around the league, show me the guys, wide receivers taken 4th round or later. Heck, 3rd round or later that are legit producers. It's not a lot. And then you couple that with the fact that the Ravens have been absolutely atrocious with taking wide receivers in the draft. Why are we falling into the same trap again this year where everyone's, patting the Ravens on the back for this pick? But I don't know. And that Prochet was a punt returner. Duvernay was your kick returner. Does Wallace have return ability that I don't know about? He's 5'11", he's undersized, and oh my God, I gotta hear this ridiculous cliche. Bro, he plays bigger than his size. Nah, you got it all wrong. He's 5'11", but he plays like he's 6'3". He's a monster. Shut up. I'm tired of hearing that. Nah, bro, it's not what you think. It's not what you think. He's 5'11", but he's a monster. He's a beast. He's a dog. I sound like such a hater, but this is such a wasted pick in my opinion. No offense to Mr. Wallace. Wish you the best. But does anyone seriously, whether you watch the tape or not, just on the principle of this alone, wide receiver, 5'11", under 200 pounds, just undersized for the NFL, 4th round selection. Is anyone confident that he's going to do anything with the Ravens? And by anything, I mean forget a reception. How many targets does this guy get in the regular season? I'm setting the over-under at like 2.5 for the entire season. With the type of passing attack the Ravens have, and the other guys you already added, I just do not care for this pick at all. Might be my least favorite pick by the Ravens in this draft. I'd seriously sit there and tell me with a straight face that Tylan Wallace is going to do anything for the Ravens on offense. Anything. Because if you spend a 4th round pick on a guy that's going to be a special teams player and not even a kick returner, not even a punt returner, what are you doing? I mean, really, what are we doing here? 4th round pick. Could have used that on a pass rusher. Could have taken another offensive lineman. Moving on. Next up, we have this trio of fifth-round picks. The Ravens did not pick after the fifth round, which is very uncharacteristic. First up was number 160 overall. They acquired this from Arizona, and they traded up to get Shaun Wade, Ohio State cornerback. Not a lot for me to say about Shaun Wade, sort of everything that I was saying earlier about Stevens as far as the cornerback position is concerned. I think that still applies here. I think this is just a lottery ticket. It's a fifth-round pick. I don't hate the time that this guy was picked. He's clearly got his deficiencies, but it comes from Ohio State, and he's going to be surrounded by a bunch of guys who really know what they're doing in terms of playing the cornerback position. He's got a lot he can learn, and doesn't hurt to have a depth piece because, again, things can change very quickly. Again, fifth round or later, you're in the territory where hitting on your picks consistently is not as dire. But to me, this is just a depth piece. Maybe someone who ends up playing more significant snaps a few years down the road. Not much for me to say about Shaun Wade. Moving on. After that, our next pick was Daelin Hayes out of Notre Dame. He seems like a project in terms of pass rush. Great kid, good head on his shoulders. Won some awards for that. Won kind of the Walter Payton Man of the Year equivalent for the college level. A lot of community service, a lot of charitable work, and just seems like a kid that has the mental strength, the mental fortitude to attack this opportunity and give himself the best chance to succeed at the NFL level. Whether that happens with the Ravens or with anyone at all, that remains to be seen. But I just, the intangibles, I guess, the clean track record, and not just that, the leadership that he displayed at Notre Dame, all of that just seems like he's a great fit for a Harbaugh scheme. So I guess it makes sense there for a Harbaugh-led team where it's always about the team over the player. Daelin Hayes seems like a welcome addition in that. So, again, a project at pass rush, we'll see, doesn't really have the size to be a guy that you think would be a consistently good pass rusher in this league. But with that being said, the Ravens have had some recent success, and success really throughout the history of their franchise at grabbing some late-round pass rushers. Pernell McPhee, Matt Judon, Zadarius Smith, couple names that were taken fourth round or later, I believe. So maybe Daelin Hayes will be the next name in that list of guys, which would be fantastic. And one more pick, and this is the other one that I kind of had a problem with, but I don't know. To me, this pick is just more confusing, and I don't understand it at all. Quite frankly, it's not even nothing against the guy, just like there was nothing I really had against Tylan Wallace. I just don't understand this one at all. Ben Mason out of Michigan, tight end fullback combo. Is this guy really a fifth round pick? Like, I know this was your last pick, but if you really wanted Ben Mason, why not trade back into the sixth or seventh, pick up an additional pick to take a swing with? Because I just have a hard time believing that other teams were chomping at the bit to grab Ben Mason in the fifth round. I don't know. We're having a lot of fun with the Pat Ricard comparisons, but does it need to be said? Pat Ricard still exists, right? Pat Ricard's still on the team, right? So where does Ben Mason fit in? I don't understand it at all. I don't think he has an immediate clear-cut role. And like I said, I was saying before, with some of these picks, like fifth round or later, you don't have to hit on all these guys, but I would at least like things to make sense. And Ben Mason is a guy that you can't convince me that there were other teams that were going to take him in the fifth round, early sixth round. You can't. You can't convince me of that. The value of this pick is so small for me. Those are all your picks for the Ravens, all 8. Overall for this draft, if I had to grade it, because we love giving out these grades, even though it's way too early for that, but my feelings on it, I'd give it a good solid B. Even though I'm not crazy about Oweh, I think those first 3 picks are solid in terms of addressing the immediate needs. Bateman, Oweh, Cleveland. That's a pretty good first 3 picks right there. I guess the question now is, in a couple days, and this is something we might be able to hopefully, fingers crossed, address on next week's episode, the May 3rd deadline for that comp pick formula in terms of free agency. Justin Houston still on the market. Villanueva still on the market. Other pass rushers still on the market. Kerrigan. I'm anticipating at least one move this week. I'm going to say one move. I'm anticipating one move, and the Ravens certainly aren't the only team that are waiting for this comp pick deadline. There's other teams out there doing the same thing, but I would be surprised if the Ravens didn't walk away with somebody early this coming week. So hopefully we'll be able to talk about that next week. But that's 151. Appreciate you guys, as always, for listening. Spread the word. Say it every week. Keep spreading the word. I've been seeing the growth. I'm loving it. Loving what I'm seeing. Keep telling your friends, telling your family members, coworkers, whoever, Ravens fans, Orioles fans. We'll be here next week. I'll talk to you then.